What would constitute a successful 2024-2025 for your San Jose Sharks?
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, also the co-host of Western Conference Tuesdays on the Locked On NHL channel. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Probably part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. If you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube as well. And today we're going to look at kind of three things that I think would make a successful 2024-2025 season for the San Jose Sharks. Looking at just showing improvement, right? Can we lift the Titanic off of the ground from one of the worst hockey seasons we've seen in recent history? Young players establishing themselves, and we'll kind of talk about what that means for some of these guys. And can Mike Grier continue to get assets at the trade deadline and look at potential players who could be on the move? So before we get to all that, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. So let's start. Number one, a successful 2024-2025 season would be for the San Jose Sharks to show improvement as a team. And honestly, I don't think it's going to be that hard. This is very low-hanging fruit, right? This team was one of the worst teams it was the worst team in the NHL, one of the worst teams we have seen, in recent NHL history. You can point to a slew of stats, right? Having the worst goal differential, minus 150. Again, one of the worst that we've seen in the past 30 plus years. You have to go back to like mid 70s Caps team. I think was kind of the last time you saw something as horrific as what the Sharks did. The second worst team in goals for, the worst team in the NHL when it came to actually goals allowed. This team was bad. They were bad on the penalty kill. Like, by all metrics, this team was bad, and that's why they were the worst team in the NHL and got themselves a nice shiny toy in Macklin Celebrini. David Quinn, of course, gets swept out. Ryan Warsofsky promoted to the head coach. So can we see improvement? And I'm not expecting like this team going from 19 wins to, like a 40-win team or something like that. But like, we can't have the 10-1s, 10-2s, 7-1s that you would see like every other week from this team. I think that's kind of number one, right? It's just, can you be a competitive team night in, night out? And not just every 2 weeks where I have to come on this podcast and say, well, the Sharks lost 7-1 tonight. It was cool to see, Fabian Zetterlund score a goal, and yeah, they stunk. Like, let's try to limit that this season. I think that's a big thing. Is just night in, night out, be a competitive team, even if it's like, can you be like a 40-minute team, right? Give me 2 really good periods, and then maybe, things like you're just the skill level shows up in the third period, right? And that's fine. We expect this team to still be bad this year, right? Realistic expectations, this team's still going to be one of the 5 worst teams in the NHL. But again, let's just be competitive night in, night out, and can we not be the worst team in the NHL when it comes to goals given up? And can we just like see some improvement in the offense? So, whether you're like the 20th, 22, 23, like somewhere in that range offensively, I like that feels kind of doable, especially you expect, right? William Eklund, year 2. I know Celebrini and Smith are both going to be in their first seasons. Fabian Zetterlund, hopefully kind of continues his growth and progression. I think the defense is going to be better than it was last year with some of the additions they made, with Jake Wallman, Cody Cece. Like there is room and opportunity for this team to get better, but we can't, again, just keeping it realistic of what this team is hopefully can do, right? And this team, again, they scored 180 goals last year and they gave up 326 goals. The next closest team with goals allowed was the Columbus Blue Jackets with 298. It's almost a 30 goal difference. That's can we get it down to I don't know, 275, which would last year put you at the 8th worst? That's like a 50 goal drop there. And the goals for, right? They were 100 they scored 180 goals, 2 more than the Blackhawks, who scored 178. The next team, the Ducks, was at 203. Can you get to 220, 230? That puts you around. So let's see. This Blue Jackets, and Canadians were all 234 or 232. Get up in that range. Where again, you're not some offensive dynamo or powerhouse, but you're just a more efficient team. And those teams, are averaging about 2.8 goals per night, while the Sharks average 2.2. It'd be a huge jump, 0.6 goals per game. But I think that they have talented pieces, right? You went out, you got Tyler Toffoli, you added Alex Wenberg to kind of give you some Logan Couture insurance. Of course, Macklin, Celebrini, Will Smith. We expect these guys. We did kind of what the expectations for those guys are, and high teens, early 20 goals. You had those. You had Toffoli, who's walking 25 to 30 goals. If Eklund can kind of hit that 25 goal mark, you can see where all the pieces are going to be coming together. And I don't expect anybody to be a 40 goal scorer on the Sharks, but this could definitely be a goal scoring by committee approach for them the next season. And if the power play can continue to play the way it did at the end of the season, there's no reason why this team can't be, at least instead of atrocious, be mediocre-ish, right? Just be bad instead of atrocious. So I think those are the big things. It's just, can you see some improvement night in and night out, and not have, I think it'll help if you're not having so many of these 7-1 type of affairs where the game is over, kind of 7-8 minutes into the game, it's already 3-0, and you're just getting kind of dominated when it comes to time of possession, all that stuff. If you can have less of those, I think you can be more competitive night in, night out. You're not going to see as much of this crazy goal differential scoring, and I think there's a path to just be a normal bad team instead of one of the worst bad teams with hope, right? And that would be a huge improvement from, again, being what we saw last season. And I think too, kind of mentioning special teams for the penalty kill, which was 28th in the NHL last year, 75.4%. To this prior season, I guess 2 seasons ago, this was a solid penalty kill unit. Can you get back kind of above that 80 per? I guess you don't have to be 80%. Just be kind of upper 70s. Can he be middle of the pack? And I think with the additions, especially that they made on kind of the bottom 6, you have guys like Barclay Goodrow, Carl Grundstrom, Ty Dellandrea, Nico Sturm still here. Zetterlund and Eklund both kind of showed some penalty kill prowess at the end of last season. Luke Cunning, there's plenty of guys here where you can hopefully be able to kind of spread out the PK where you're not having to just kind of rely on those top guys. So I do expect the PK to show some improvement if the power play can continue to be the way it was, especially at the end of the season. I know it'll be different units, but I think there's a real opportunity to actually have two potential units instead of running out, some of the guys that they ran out at the end of last season. I think there is a pathway for the Sharks to show improvement. That's what you want, right? Can Ryan Warsofsky take some of the pieces that from last year, build upon some of these successes, especially the power play, and just try to get a more cohesive unit that can actually play defense once in a while in its own zone, and you're just be more competitive night in, night out. And I think that goes a long way in what everything else you're kind of the other goals for this season, which are one, establishing some of the young players, and we'll talk about some of those guys here in a second, and two, being able to flip and get assets at the trade deadline. So we'll talk about some of the young players, and of course, which guys we want to, I think we want to see really solidify themselves and kind of what that means for each guy. So we'll get to that here in just 1 second. The NFL is here. Happy NFL season. And if you want to get tickets for football games, if you want to catch a baseball game before the season's over, hockey is right around the corner. Whatever you want to get, Game Time has got you covered. Game Time is a new feature called Game Time Picks, which makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you the incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Like if you're like me, right, I'm not going to spend $1 bajillion to go sit in the front row because I can't afford $1 bajillion tickets to go sit in the front row. So they'll help me find tickets that fit my criteria. The thing I do love about Game Time is being able to see my seats before I go. I know, if I go catch a Giants game or if I go up to San Francisco, there's no bad seats, but it's good to see what your seats are going to look like, because there's nothing worse than getting there and realizing you have bad seats. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right. Young players, right? And we know the guys, of course. The two big ones. We talked about them on Monday. The two most important players in San Jose this year are Macklin, Celebrini, and Will Smith. And we kind of talked about, why they're the most important. But, right, this is a huge goal for the Sharks, is establishing these guys as everyday NHL players. And can we see sustained, not just flashes, right? Because you're going to get those flashes, especially with these skilled guys, especially early in the season. You're going to get flashes of them doing something incredible. And then you're probably going to see them, maybe kind of fade back, or maybe, go a couple shifts where you don't really notice them and stuff like that. But can you, especially by the end of the season, right? And these are kind of season long goals. Can you see them have those periods? Doesn't have to be an actual period, but couple shifts in a row, or a full period, or half a game where they're every time they're on the ice and you're oh, that's why. And I think that's for Smith and Celebrini. That's kind of the goal for this season, is especially when we have these two high end picks, right? Macklin, Celebrini, of course, the first overall pick last year's draft. Will Smith, number 4 in a very stacked 2023 NHL draft. Can you have those games or those periods or those moments where you're oh, he's just special, right? He's doing things that just other guys really can't do. And it might seem like I'm asking a lot. But again, these are super special players. These are super talented players who have, from all accounts, it sounds like Will Smith has been hitting the gym. Shangpeng, he's been kind of at all the captain skates, right? And he's been talking about Will Smith looks bigger, and that's good. It's a long season. It's a long grind, going from playing 35, 40 games in college, where you're playing, 2 games on the weekend, and then you get kind of the rest of the week off for the most part, to playing, 3 games in 4 nights, a lot of travel, a lot more travel, right? You're not just traveling up around Northeast, you're traveling all over the country. It's a big grind for both these players. There's going to be those ups and downs, right? We saw it with William Eklund last year, but can you manage those ups and downs, manage the lows, build off the highs, And then by the end of the season, can we have those moments where you're just like, okay, I can see it here, right? And you look no further than William Eklund right last year. Had his ups and downs, definitely had some down moments, especially around kind of the hurdle trade, kind of around the trade deadline, where he's playing center, kind of playing out of position there. You put him up with Granlund, and then boom, the end of the season, a lot of highs there, right? And it kind of culminated with the hat trick on Hat Day that we all remember. That image of Eklund wearing that goofy hat and that big smile, like that was one of those moments where you're like, okay, Eklund can be a special dude for San Jose. Can we get those moments for Celebrini and Smith? Like kind of get through the season, 75, 80 games, and then just kind of continue trying to be more consistent. And speaking about consistency, I think that's the big thing for Eklund, right? Not having those like week, 2 week where you just he's maybe producing points here and there, but just not, like that, just not that consistency. And I think that's a big thing, right? And you hear that a lot from players is, especially that AHL to NHL jump is learning to be more consistent night in and night out. And I think you should expect Eklund to be a more consistent player. One, because they have more skilled players around, where you're not having to kind of play such a top line loaded affair that we saw from San Jose last year, especially after kind of Christmas when Hurdle got hurt, right? And then you basically had to run Granlund, Zetterlund, and Duclair as a line, and then Eklund kind of got stuck not really having a center to kind of help him out. Shouldn't have that problem this season, right? You have more than enough guys to be able to run two good lines, and Eklund should be a big part of that. So can we see a consistent Eklund? Can we see him, not have those lulls you're still going to have the lulls, but can you see less of them? And can he continue to grow as a full 200-foot player? I think that's a big thing for Eklund is, right, see consistent scoring. My prediction, I still think Eklund's going to lead the team in scoring. I'd have him kind of penciled in for over 70 points. And just every night, like being the guy type of player. So, and especially as we wait for Celebrini and Smith to kind of go through their ups and downs, can Eklund kind of be the guy this season as Celebrini and Smith kind of grow into their roles? And then for guys like Mukhamadullin and Henry Thrun, Thrun I think is going to need to continue to with his development and being a every night NHL player, maybe, and not to make the kind of the mental mistakes. He talked about earlier this offseason after he signed his contract, working in his own zone a lot more, right? You spend so much time kind of working in the offensive zone when you're kind of growing up and developing, but working in his own zone, kind of working on using his frame more, like he talked about, put on muscle. And I think Thrun is going to do that this season. And then for Mukhamadullin, can you be an every night NHL player? And kind of the same thing, right? As we saw those we saw some special moments from him in the AHL. Can those translate to the NHL? Can the skills that you've worked on in the AHL translate to the NHL and kind of clear that path for you kind of going into next season where you're like an unquestioned, no doubt, you're going to be in the NHL type of player for the Sharks and be a big part of it. So I think for Mukhamadullin, kind of need to have a huge training camp. Whether you win a job or not, I know the numbers are not really in his favor right now, and we'll spend some time next week kind of looking at some of the training camp battles. But I think for him, using whatever time you have in the AHL, use it wisely. But then when you're in the NHL, take every opportunity to kind of show why you can be a good player in the NHL. So those are the kind of the guys, and of course Askarov. We've talked a lot about Askarov, but take advantage of your opportunities when you get them, and show why you can be the goalie of the future. So, but the big ones I think though for Celebrini, for Smith and Eklund, what steps can we see from you this upcoming season? So next we'll talk about kind of big steps for kind of the last goal, I think, or for the organization to have a successful season is getting assets at the trade deadline. And we'll look at some of the guys and who could be potentially available and why it's still important for Mike Grier to try to still hoard assets. So we'll get to that here in just 1 second. Of course, I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Probably part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. We are back next week to 5 episodes a week. So Monday through Friday, we'll have you covered, which is good because we have rookie face-off this weekend. We'll have you covered for all that fun stuff. Start getting you geared up for training camp. We got preseason games right around the corner. Hockey's here, baby. It's back. Summer felt way too short, but so make sure you guys are following wherever you get podcasts from me, or you can check out one of the other great shows for your second listen, right? You have Locked On NHL, where we're still pumping out 5 episodes a week. Seth and I just talked about burning questions around the Colorado Avalanche, Dallas Stars, and Edmonton Oilers. We'll be going through every Western Conference team here over the next couple of weeks. Or you can check out any of the shows here in the Bay Area, right? You got Locked On Giants, Locked On A's, Locked On Warriors, Locked On Niners. Plenty of good stuff here at the Locked On Locked On Network. Sorry, we cover your team every day. So the last thing to make this a successful season is for Mike Grier to continue to get assets. And this doesn't have to just be draft picks, right? Couple episodes ago, was it 2 weeks ago, I think, last week, whatever time, who knows. I talked about how I think, we're going to start seeing Mike Grier be more aggressive to get NHL players, because I think you're kind of starting to see this core put together. And while I still think they're going to have another top 5 pick in this draft upcoming, you got to start to kind of look at how this core is being built and how it's kind of getting, you don't want it to get too stretched out, right? Where you have guys who are like the age difference being kind of too spread out. You don't want the 2 timeline warriors thing to kind of go on here. So I know they're still going to add pieces. They're going to continue to add pieces in the draft, but getting young, soon to be NHL ready players, not the worst thing, right? And the Sharks are going to have plenty of stuff, I think, that they're still going to be able to trade, right? Going into this season, you have Mikael Granlund, who's in the last year of his deal. You have Luke Kunin, who's in the last year of his deal. Nico Sturm, the last year of his deal. Fabian Zelin, technically, is also in the last year of his deal. I don't think he's going away anywhere. But, you look at like Sturm, Kunin, those are both solid bottom 6 players that teams are going to want, especially kind of like playoff caliber teams. They want those guys who can play penalty kill minutes, play bottom 6 minutes. They're going to be good in the locker room. That's kind of what the Sturm, Kunin type of roles are. I don't think they're going to fetch massive hauls, right? But that gives you pieces to go turn around and do something else, right? We saw the Tomas Hertl. Traded Hertl, you got some pieces, you turn around and you flip those for Askarov. Like, it doesn't have to be like a clean, Nico Sturm for prospect X type of thing. Like, just get stuff that you can go do other things with. So Mikael Granlund's gonna be interesting, right? Especially because the Sharks don't have any more retention slots in his $5 million. But I think if he has another really good season like we saw last year out of him, where he's almost a point per game type of player, teams will they'll figure it out if they want to add a guy like Granlund, who could be a really solid 3rd line center for a team. And, he can play on the penalty kill. Like, he can play on the power play. He's going to make whoever he plays with better. So I could definitely see Granlund, teams will be asking for Granlund. Then you look at the blue line, right? You have Jan Ruda and Cody Ceci, both in the last year of their deals. Both those contracts are, you can fit those in. Ceci's making $3.25 million. Ruda's making $2.75 million. Those are, again, guys who can play bottom 6 minutes on a playoff caliber team. I think those are players that teams will look at. And then if the Sharks want to get aggressive and trade, if they get a really nice haul for Mario Ferraro, who's got 2 years left on his deal, that could be where if you potentially get a high first round pick or a high quality type of player, that could be your right there, that type of deal. And then of course you have the goalies. Vitek Vanacek and Mackenzie Blackwood are both in last year of their deals. If a goalie gets hurt or teams want to add some more support on, a guy who can play stretches for you, these are all pieces that Mike Grier should be actively moving, because you have guys who are going to want to kind of move into their spots eventually, right? Especially the goalie. You want to clear the path for Askarov, and then if you trade Blackwood, if you trade Vitek Vanacek and you want to keep the other one to kind of be the 1A to, and then as Askarov next year is probably going to be a 1B, and then eventually flip those roles at some point. But for Grier, continue to get assets, whether it's picks, whether it's prospects, whatever it is, because you can always package and bundle things up to try to get better picks and prospects later, right? And we've seen Grier be aggressive with that, moving up in the draft from 14 to 11. Cost you a second round pick that you got for free for trading for Jake Wallman. Like, you've seen Grier kind of make these moves here where like taking some stuff that he's gotten from other trades, packaging it up to try to kind of position himself or to get something better. So I expect Grier to continue to do that. Even last year, right? Duclair, you got a third round pick, and you got Jack Thompson. Like, Duclair was probably not going to resign. He could have resigned with the Sharks this offseason, went to the Islanders. You continue to be aggressive in trying to get assets for these guys who are not going to be part of your long-term core, because you can always re-sign veterans in the offseason, and you want to start clearing a path for your young guys to be able to establish themselves as NHL players. So I think those are the big things for the Sharks to have a successful 24-25 season. Is, can you show tangible improvements, which I don't think will be very hard, right? I would be really shocked if we're watching a repeat of last year of this team being an utter train wreck night in, night out. There's going to be those nights, right? Like that's going to happen, but can we have fewer of those? And can we, just improve the scoring a little bit, decrease the goals against, see some improvement in the special teams? I think those are, I'm not asking too much, right? Can we go from like a 19 win team to like a 27, 28, 30, maybe flirting with 30 win team? Like, cool. I'd be really happy with that. So no more of these like multiple 9-game losing streaks. So can we see some of that? Can we see the young players establish themselves and see Mike Grier continue to add resources for him to be aggressive at the draft, in free agency, et cetera, et cetera. So that's going to be it for me today. We'll be back either Thursday or Friday. Depends on my schedule depends on my schedule. We'll get you guys ready for the rookie tournament, kind of look at some of the new players, what to kind of watch for, all that good stuff. So make sure you're following wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter at MyFryHole. Until later this week. Bye, friends.